So the next topic that I want to just briefly talk about in this video is the periodic table and chemical symbols. And this is pretty much the heart and soul of chemistry, the periodic table. The analogy I tend to use talking about chemistry is that you're not taking a science class, you're really taking a foreign language course. And that's not as crazy as it sounds, because we're going to see that the periodic table is our alphabet, our Rosetta Stone, you know, whatever you want to call it. This is where we're going to have the building blocks of matter that we're going to use throughout this course, and not just in chemistry, but in pretty much every other science that deals with matter, that deals with the physical world. Now, the periodic table, we're going to see that it's going to have all the elements that we're going to be working with. And each one of the elements has a chemical symbol. There is an expectation that you're going to know both the symbol and the name for different elements. Now, some of them, we'll see, hydrogen is just capital H. Helium is HE, capital H, lowercase e. For the systematic naming of the elements, an element will either have one letter, which is capitalized, or it'll have two letters, and the second letter is always lowercase. That way we don't write two capital letters together and think we have two different elements when we're trying to say that we have one. So helium is He. Now, H, hydrogen, He, helium. Li is lithium. Looks pretty good so far. H, He, Li. And if we skip ahead, later in the periodic table, we'll find the element Fe, which is iron. Which of these is not like the other? When you're looking at the nomenclature of the chemical elements, it's very important to recognize that the elements have been around since basically before mankind. As primitive peoples, thousands of years ago, started to pick stuff up and do transformations and so forth, well, when they would find an ore or a pure element, they gave it a name. As it turns out, iron, the symbol is from ferrous or ferric, which is a Latin term for iron. So what we're going to find out is that the periodic table actually is the best representation of human civilization going back thousands of years, because each culture throughout history has put their fingerprint on the periodic table, has given a name to a particular element. So we don't refer to iron as ferrium or anything like that typically. However, historically, because of the Latin name, that's why we have the symbol of Fe. There is an element Ir, which is iridium, and we'll go through that later on. Now, one of the things I'll tell you right now is that yes, you do have to memorize the names and symbols of quite a few elements, and probably the number of elements that you need to know can be around 30 or so. And if you think to yourself, well, memorizing 30 names and symbols, how can I possibly do that? Here is the challenge I would give to you. Write out the alphabet, A, B, C, all the way through D. I'm sorry, through Z, A, B, C, all the way through Z on a piece of paper. Then write 3 words that begin with each letter. And you'll be surprised that even for something like a Q or an X, you can still find 3 words. Well, That's memorization. In other words, you've actually got a lot more information in your brain than you give yourself credit for. So, memorizing the symbol and the name of the elements, when you're first looking at it, it's going to be very daunting. However, given a little bit of time, just like any language, you're going to pick up a apple, axe, aardvark, whatever. You're going to be able to realize that, oh, okay, iron is here, tungsten is there on the periodic table, cobalt, and sulfur and so forth. So one of the things that is very, very much a growing experience, learning curve, if you will, is getting familiar with the element symbols and the element names. And the analogy of using chemistry or equating chemistry with a language, we're going to see that a little bit later in the class. If these are the letters of our alphabet, F, E, L, E, H, E, H, and so forth, we're going to make words. We're going to put different elements together, and that will be the equivalent of a word. Later on, we'll actually put words together and make sentences, and those we would consider to be chemical reactions. So if you think about chemistry in the context of learning a foreign language, that can help some of the pain as far as, oh my God, I have to memorize. And basically that's true with anything in life, that if you remember it, by definition, you've memorized it. So don't fool yourself into saying, well, I can't memorize something, because you actually have memorized quite a bit, but you don't think of it in the same terms as you do a science class, because that's a science class, and I don't want to do memorization. But I know words, I know the names of my friends, I know the names of my family and objects. Well, that's memorization. In other words, there's, you don't pick that up without memorizing it. So we'll go through periodic table, chemical names, symbols, and all of that throughout the semester. And quite frankly, your entire career of taking science classes will, one way or another, come back to chemistry in many ways.